Chapter 2352. The surroundings were quiet, and no one appeared. Dumpling crossed her two small arms. I've already helped you so much, and you don't even want to thank me? A moment later, a scarlet fruit was thrown over. Dumpling grabbed the fruit. Cinnabar fruit? A bright light flashed in her eyes. This was her favorite fruit, one of them. Ever since she started cultivating in Fengming Mountain, she hadn't eaten anything delicious for a long time. She happily held the cinnabar fruit and was about to put it into her mouth, but when it reached her mouth, she held it back and pouted as she looked in the direction where the fruit was thrown. Don't think that a single cinnabar fruit can buy me off. Another cinnabar fruit was sent over. Dumpling raised her hand to catch it and put the fruit into her bosom. Two won't do. Today you have to come out and let me see. As she spoke, she lifted her foot and walked forward. Swish, a slight sound of something tearing through the air rang out. Then, Tuanzi saw a blurry shadow flashing in front of her eyes. She gritted her teeth, tipped her toes, and immediately flew forward. Let's see where you're going this time. She couldn't catch up the previous few times, but this time, she had to see it clearly no matter what. That thing ran very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. Dumpling stopped and looked down at the cinnabar fruit in her hand. A rich, fruity fragrance was emitted from it, causing people to drool. She licked her lips and resisted the urge to eat it. Want to run? It's not that easy. The smell of this cinnabar fruit could stay on a person's body for several days. It didn't matter if she couldn't see it. Following this smell, she could still find him. Dumpling wrinkled her nose, then followed the faint fragrance in the air and ran forward. A quarter of an hour later, Dumpling stopped in front of the barrier between Fengming Mountain and the illusory God Palace. She frowned. Could it be inside? That was where the fragrance had disappeared. She looked up and down, left and right. This barrier descended from the sky, completely isolating them from the outside world. If he wanted to leave this place, the only way was to go through the barrier. No wonder. Dumpling suddenly understood. Previously, she couldn't find him at all. So he had actually run back to the illusory God Palace? To think that she had been searching Fengming Mountain recently. She had almost dug 3 feet into the ground, but she still couldn't find him. In the end, he was looking in the wrong direction. She hesitantly glanced at the barrier in front of her. How do I get there? All right. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. She held the 2 cinnabar fruits in her left hand and gently waved her right hand, summoning the ancestor golden feather. If I remember correctly, this thing can directly pass through the barrier, Dumpling thought and waved her hand gently. Buzz, a crack quickly appeared on the barrier. Success! Dumpling was pleasantly surprised. She quickly entered. Abundant heaven and earth energy instantly surged in from all directions. Dumpling took a deep breath and felt cool all over. Fengming Mountain was good, but it was a little hot. Therefore, when he suddenly came out from the inside, he was still not used to it. Dumpling turned around to take a look. The crack had already quietly closed. The surroundings were also quiet, as if no one had noticed her arrival. Dumpling blinked. This barrier? It seemed to be very easy to pass through. She put away the ancestor golden feather, and sure enough, she caught the other party's remaining aura in the air. Over there. Dumpling confirmed the direction and quickly rushed over. A sound rang out in the quiet courtyard. Something suddenly drilled into the pile of fallen leaves, raising countless flying leaves. After a moment, an indifferent and quiet voice came from the room. You sneaked to Fengming Mountain again? The pile of fallen leaves remained motionless. Have you forgotten what I warned you before? There was a hint of coldness in that voice. The courtyard was deathly silent. At this moment, a series of knocks came from outside. Knock knock. Is anyone there? A crisp and soft voice came from outside. The conversation in the room abruptly stopped. Outside the door, Dumpling's face revealed a smug and proud smile. Hee hee, this is your home, right? I've already found you here. Are you still not willing to come out? She was very sure that the other party was definitely here, because that was where the smell had disappeared. Originally, she wanted to go in directly, but there was a layer of barrier outside the courtyard. She thought about it and felt that it was not appropriate to force her way in, so she obediently chose to knock on the door. Since he had already chased her here, there was no reason to hide, right? After waiting for a while, it was still quiet inside. There was no response. Dumpling knocked on the door again. Knock, knock, knock. I'm not a bad person, why aren't you coming out? Still no one answered. Dumpling waited for a while longer, a little angry, and pouted. If you don't come out, I'll go in myself. After saying that, she placed her hands on the door and moved her chubby little face closer, wanting to peek through the crack in the door. Unfortunately, although this courtyard was not big, the quality of the courtyard door was excellent. She widened her grape-like eyes and spun them around, but she still couldn't see anything. How can this be? Dumpling muttered softly. She had done him a huge favor. Was she going to leave 2 cinnabar fruits behind just like that? Why are you here? The voice of a woman filled with astonishment came from behind. Dumpling turned her head to look. The person who came was Xu Jing. Dumpling pursed her lips and ignored her. She pressed her face against the door again and secretly exerted force with both hands. Perhaps she could really open the door and go in to take a look. However, her behavior was extremely arrogant and presumptuous in Xu Jing's eyes. What are you doing? Xu Jing frowned. This dumpling not only left Fengming Mountain, but also ran to the first divine envoy's place to behave atrociously? What was she doing? Trying to force her way in? Dumpling pretended that she did not hear her. Xu Jing was infuriated. She had come to find the first divine envoy this time to solve the problem of the barrier in Herb Mountain. After the abnormal situation that day, she did not care much and hurried back to the palace of the illusory god. She wanted to ask for help, but she was scolded and ridiculed by the second divine envoy. Helpless, she could only go back and think of a solution herself. In fact, she was also holding back her anger in her heart. After so many years, she still had not been able to solve the problem of the barrier. She was also anxious. That day when she had been slapped by Little 8, she was already angry enough. Now, the second divine envoy's words had completely enraged her. She simply chose to go into seclusion and think of a solution no matter what. However, how could this problem be solved so easily? She had a headache thinking about it day and night, but it still did not work. Helpless, she could only hold on to her last hope and ask the first divine envoy for help. However, she bumped into Dumpling as soon as she arrived. She stepped forward and pulled Dumpling. This is not a place where you can come. Chapter 2353. However, before he could touch Tuanzi, he suddenly felt an invisible pressure coming at him. Xu Jing was shocked and quickly dodged. However, she was still forced to take a few steps back and almost fell to the ground. She hurriedly steadied herself and looked up in bewilderment. Was this the barrier of the first divine envoy? However, Dumpling was clearly standing in front of her, so why wasn't she attacked at all? Dumpling looked back at her again. Her beautiful big eyes blinked a few times and she giggled. It seems that the people inside don't like you very much. Xu Jing was so angry that she almost choked. What nonsense are you talking about? How am I talking nonsense? Dumpling stretched out her hand and gestured. I haven't entered the courtyard yet, but you can't even get close to the door. This was a stark difference between them. Anyone would be able to see that. Xu Jing was angry, and her face turned red and white. Actually, she wasn't the one who was strange, but Dumpling. Previously, when she and the seventh divine envoy came here, they also couldn't get close to the door. However, when she saw Dumpling leaning on the door and looking inside, she forgot for a moment. Now that she thought about it, it was obvious that Dumpling was too close. What was the first divine envoy thinking? Could it be because of Dumpling's identity? But shouldn't she be at Fengming Mountain now? Thinking of this, Xu Jing's expression changed. How did you get past that barrier? Dumpling glanced at her and muttered softly, It's none of your business. As she spoke, she knocked on the door again. If you don't come out, I'm really going to kick the door down. Xu Jing trembled with fear as she listened. Who was she talking to? The first divine envoy? Impossible. However, there was no one else in this courtyard other than the first divine envoy. At this moment, another person arrived. Dumpling, what are you doing? His voice was low and carried a hint of displeasure. When Shu Jing saw him, she quickly bowed. Greetings, second divine envoy. Yu Qian's eyes swept over her, but he didn't linger on her for long. He only looked at Dumpling. Not long after he left Fengming Mountain, he sensed that Dumpling had also come out. He was shocked and immediately set out to search everywhere. In the end, he found this place. Dumpling turned around and looked at Yu Qian with hostility. It's none of your business. His tone was very aggressive. Shu Jing frowned and sneered in his heart. The second divine envoy usually looked gentle, but he wasn't easy to get along with. What he hated the most was when someone contradicted him. Dumpling had spoken so rudely, so she had to be taught a lesson. However, what shocked her was that Yu Qian didn't seem to be angry. He stared at Dumpling for a moment and said, "Didn't we agree before that you would cultivate well in Fengming Mountain? What are you doing now?" Dumpling snorted. "Fengming Mountain is so boring, can't I come out for a walk?" Yu Qian narrowed his eyes. "You came out on your own?" Dumpling's heart skipped a beat. She raised her small face. "Yes. I opened the barrier myself with the ancestors' golden feather. What's wrong?" Yu Qian paused. "It's not impossible for you to come to the palace of the illusory god." The second divine envoy? Shu Jing was shocked. What kind of place was this? How could Dumpling come and go as she pleased? Looking at her arrogant and despotic appearance, who knew what she would do in the future? Yu Qian gave Shu Jing a warning look. It was not her place to intervene in this kind of matter. Shu Jing felt a chill run down his spine. He quickly lowered his head and swallowed the rest of his words. However, his hands were tightly clenched in his sleeves, and his knuckles turned white. She was the 8th divine envoy and should be high and mighty. But now, anyone could ride on her head and behave atrociously. Yu Qian looked at Dumpling. "However, there are some places you can go, and some places you can't. This is the residence of the first divine envoy. You are not allowed to disturb her in the future." His expression remained the same, but there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Dumpling pursed her lips. She was extremely smart. She knew when to make a fuss and when not to. Just like now, Yu Qian was definitely not joking. She gritted her teeth and snorted softly. "If you don't want to come, then don't. There are plenty of places to play here anyway." After saying that, she walked away with her little legs. Halfway through, she suddenly thought of something and turned back to look at Yu Qian. "Who in the palace of the illusory god has a magical beast?" Yu Qian raised his eyebrows. "Among the divine envoys, only I am responsible for guarding the mythological beast." Dumpling pursed her lips and turned to leave. Yu Qian followed her. "If you are really bored, I can show you around." But he would never allow Tuanzi to run around here by herself. Dumpling was very tired of him. She wished she could never see his annoying face again. But she also knew that if she really wanted to see what the palace of the illusory god was like, she really had to let him follow her. Crunch. She picked up the cinnabar fruit in her arms and took a fierce bite. Seeing that Yu Qian really left with Dumpling, Shu Jing gritted her teeth in hatred. What the hell? She was just a member of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. She was really arrogant. She didn't even put her, the 8th divine envoy, in her eyes. But the second divine envoy thought highly of her. Needless to say, as long as Dumpling didn't make any big mistakes, she would be able to do whatever she wanted here for a long time. Shu Jing was very angry, but she also knew that there was nothing she could do. Dumpling's existence was too important to the palace of the illusory god. Otherwise, the second divine envoy wouldn't spoil her so much. She turned her head to look at the closed door. From beginning to end, the first divine envoy didn't say a word. This was undoubtedly a tacit approval of the second divine envoy's actions. No matter how much she said, it was useless. After calming down the emotions in her heart, she finally remembered her purpose for coming here. First divine envoy, the barrier at the Herb Mountain is starting to have problems again. "You, that's your business?" An indifferent and cold voice came from within. "I've given you so much time to deal with it. If you still can't solve it, then no one can help you." Shu Jing's face turned pale. But that barrier was... Her voice suddenly stopped. She didn't dare to say what she was going to say next. No one dared to mention what happened back then. It was best to leave it as a blur in the dust of time. That was a taboo in the palace of the illusory god. She clearly knew this. After hesitating for a long time, seeing that the first divine envoy really didn't intend to do anything, she finally gave up and bowed to leave. Shu Jing will take her leave. After leaving, Shu Jing originally wanted to go back to her residence. But halfway there, the fire in her heart burned more and more fiercely. The first divine envoy, the second divine envoy, and the others were all watching with folded arms. Were they really planning to make things difficult for her? Recently, unlucky things had happened one after another, and it almost made her collapse. She couldn't just let everyone step on her head. Thinking of this, she turned around and walked out of the palace of the illusory god. The matter of the barrier at the Herb Mountain couldn't be solved in a short time. She might as well go and get back at little Hachi first. Chapter 2354. She couldn't afford to offend the two divine envoys, but she could still teach a lowly person without a bloodline totem a lesson. However, before she reached the door, she suddenly noticed something and stopped in her tracks. Then, the void in front of her began to shake. A tall and slender figure slowly appeared. She was stunned at first, but then she recognized the person, and a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. "Yen, where are you going?" A cold voice sounded. Shu Jing was stunned and said subconsciously, "I'm going out. You're not going to the Herb Mountain." The other party's tone was very certain. Shu Jing felt that something was wrong. Her eyes flashed and she said, "If I'm not going to the Herb Mountain, where else can I go?" The appearance and figure of the man opposite her were hidden behind the fluctuating void, and she couldn't see him clearly. However, Shu Jing seemed to be able to feel a pair of sharp and cold eyes staring at her. Her whole body tensed up. After a while, she heard the other party say, "That's good." Shu Jing frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, during this period of time, you'd better not go anywhere except the illusory god palace and the Herb Mountain, and don't cause any trouble." Shu Jing's heart skipped a beat. Why did this sound so wrong? What did he mean by don't cause any trouble? He made it sound like she had been causing trouble all this time? Shu Jing felt a little uncomfortable, but she still forced a smile. "I understand." With that, the man turned around and was about to leave. "Wait." Shu Jing hurriedly stopped him. The man half turned around. "Is there anything else?" Shu Jing pursed her lips and asked nervously, "Nothing. It's just that I haven't seen you for a long time, and I wanted to ask, how have you been?" After asking this, Shu Jing's face was faintly hot. This question seemed a little abrupt. "I've been very well." Unexpectedly, that person actually gave a reply. Shu Jing was stunned. In the past, he would never say anything more, but this time, then. Shu Jing was about to continue speaking, but the void vibrated, and the man had already left. Looking at the empty void in front of her, Shu Jing felt a little disappointed for a moment. But when she remembered that he had actually answered her question, her heart seemed to overflow with joy. After thinking for a while, Shu Jing gradually calmed the churning thoughts in her heart and began to think about what he had said before. "Don't cause any more trouble and can only stay in the Herb Mountain and the illusory god palace?" Did he suddenly come here today to tell her this? Could it be to warn her not to act rash action? Shu Jing. On the one hand, she wanted to find little 8 for revenge and get back the slap she gave him that day. On the other hand, the sudden arrival of this person also confused her. After thinking about it for a while, she finally put away her thoughts and decided to put the matter of little 8 aside. That person must have a deep meaning for suddenly saying all this. No matter how he thought about it, it was better to wait and see how things turned out. The courtyard was silent. Suddenly, an explosion came from one of the rooms. Bang! The sound shocked Hua Shuang so much that she pushed the door open and ran out. "What's wrong? What are you doing?" Smelling the burnt smell, he shouted at once, "Little Hachi! Little Hachi! Did you do something again?" Hearing Hua Shuang's voice, little Hachi, who had just run out of the house, felt wronged. Second brother, I've been busy in my room. Which eye of yours saw me do something? She held the door and stepped on her shoes carelessly. Her hands were stained with red. Little Hachi was also very angry. She was painting her nails when there was a sudden explosion. She was so shocked that her hands trembled. The bottle of flower dew that she had painstakingly prepared spilled just like that. Who could she reason with? Hua Shuang covered her face. If it's not you, then who is it? It's me. A door at the side suddenly opened, and thick black smoke floated out. A wretched figure ran out while coughing. Little Hachi's beautiful eyes were overflowing with killing intent. Jian Feng, to compensate me for the flower dew. Jian Fengqi finally came to the yard with much difficulty and sat down on the stone bench before he could catch his breath. Wait for me to recover. Hua Shuang glanced at him. Jian Fengqi, are you refining pills or setting a fire? The house is about to be set on fire. Jian Fengqi's face was streaked with black and gray. His usual suave and handsome appearance was completely gone. Cough. I was in a hurry when I was refining pills. I was about to succeed. Almost just a little bit. Next time it will definitely succeed. Next time? Little Hachi gritted her teeth in anger. When Yanqing returned, he saw this scene. He quickly glanced around and understood what had happened. When his gaze fell on Little Hachi, he frowned slightly. Little Hachi was worried that she couldn't make a move in her current state, but when she saw Yanqing, she immediately perked up. Brother Yanqing, hurry up and drag Jian Fengqi out. You're not allowed to come back until you successfully refine pills at the level of a senior doctor. Jian Fengqi knew something was wrong and immediately turned to Yanqing. Brother Yanqing, don't listen to her. Yanqing stopped in his tracks. Little Hachi widened her eyes. Jian Fengqi, you're shameless. Jian Fengqi said proudly, it's just calling me brother, I know how to do it too. Bah! Little Hachi bent down angrily to pick up the shoe and threw it at him. Although Jian Fengqi failed to refine pills, he still had the ability to react. He immediately lay back and dodged the shoe. Then, the shoe flew toward Yanqing. Smack! A sound was heard. Yanqing raised his hand and caught the shoe expressionlessly. The courtyard fell into a dead silence. Chapter 2355. Little Hachi was born enchanting and beautiful. She had always been very picky about what she ate and wore. She always used the best. Even her shoes were very exquisite and gorgeous. There were patterns drawn by her on them, and many colorful jade beads and jade chips were strung together. Under the sunlight, the shoes sparkled. When they swayed with the wind, they made a series of rustling sounds. However, at this moment, the shoes fell on an iceberg. Hua Shuang silently looked away. This scene was too beautiful. He didn't dare to look at it. Ahem, I remember that I still have something to do. You guys go ahead. As he spoke, he swiftly retreated back into the house and closed the door with a hung sound. Jian Fengqi stiffly dragged his body back. I'll go back and clean the room. You guys go ahead. As soon as he took a step, a cold wind hit him. A bright and sharp longsword was already in front of him. He slowly turned his head and looked at Yanqing. Brother Yanqing, I can help you if you don't want your tongue. Yanqing opened his mouth. His voice was so cold that it seemed to be mixed with ice. Jian Fengqi immediately covered his mouth. I promise I won't do it again. Yanqing put away his sword. Jian Fengqi let out a long sigh of relief. Almost. That sword was going to cut off his handsome head. Although he had always been causing trouble at the 13th Yu, Yanqing was one of Rong Xiu's people. He didn't dare to offend him, because this person could really bear to do it. Jian Fengqi's strong desire to live forced him to go against the wind and go back against the thick smoke. Compared to being cut by Yanqing, he would rather be choked to death. His figure quickly disappeared into the cloud of black smoke, and only a few coughs could be vaguely heard. Finally, only Yanqing and Little Hachi were left in the yard. Meeting Yanqing's gaze, Little Hachi felt a little embarrassed. She hid her bare foot behind her and coughed. Lord Yanqing, can you return my shoes to me? If they were ordinary shoes, she would just throw them away. But she really liked this pair of shoes. He had spent so much effort on this treasure, how could he just throw it away like that? Yanqing walked over. Little Hachi immediately became nervous. Was Yanqing planning to fight? Who wouldn't be angry if their shoes were thrown at them like that? But she didn't do it on purpose. It shouldn't be a problem if she talked to him nicely, right? While little Hachi was thinking about this, Yanqing had already arrived at the door. There was a clear aura on his body, and one of his hands was holding a sword. On the other hand, the gorgeous and exquisite shoes in his other hand seemed very out of place. Little Hachi unconsciously tightened her hand on the door. She carefully looked at Yanqing, trying to find something from his face. Unfortunately, a certain someone's face was still as cold as ice, without the slightest bit of expression. It was really hard to guess. Then, Yanqing handed the shoes over. Little Hachi didn't take them. She stretched out her hand pitifully. There's something on my hand. I can't touch the shoes, or they'll get dirty easily. Yanqing lowered his eyes and glanced at her slender and soft hand. Her white and jade-like fingers were indeed messily stained with a bit of red at this time. He paused, bent down, and squatted down. Yanqing, little Hachi was puzzled. Suddenly, she heard him say in a low voice, "Give me your foot." Little Hachi was stunned and stretched out her bare foot subconsciously. Immediately after, a scorching hot palm grabbed her ankle. Little Hachi's first reaction was to withdraw, but Yanqing's hand was so strong that she couldn't break free. She twisted twice, but it didn't work. "Don't move," Yanqing said. Little Hachi didn't dare to move at all. She looked down. Yanqing was squatting in front of her, helping her put on her shoes. She blinked. For some reason, there seemed to be a flame burning on her face. Her shoes were easy to put on. Yanqing quickly helped her put them on and then stood up. The two of them were standing very close to each other. When he suddenly stood up, little Hachi suddenly felt as if there was an inexplicable sense of oppression enveloping her. She took half a step back. Yanqing pursed his thin lips slightly. "Sorry to offend you." Little Hachi hurriedly waved her hand. No, I should thank you." Yanqing nodded slightly. His face was as cold as ever. Without saying anything more, he turned and left. Little Hachi looked at his back and closed the door. She turned around and leaned against the door. She covered her chest and took a deep breath. On the other side, Yanqing went around the porch and suddenly stopped at the corner. He closed his eyes and exhaled. Treasure Pavilion, 2nd floor. Light flowed in front of Chu Luiyue. Her eyes were fixed on the painting as she concentrated on completing the final stroke. Buzz, she had finally replicated the last Xian formation on the mythical flame diagram. Looking at the perfect Xian formation in front of her, her lips curled into a satisfied smile. It's finally over. She had been staying here all this time without sleeping or resting. Finally, she had completed it all. She closed her eyes and rested for a while. She put the mythical flame diagram and the 2 replicated books back into the box before getting up. She opened the door and saw you waiting outside. "Madam, you're finally out." Mingshu was so excited that tears filled his eyes. God knew how hard he had been waiting. At first, he only came to take a look occasionally. But as time passed, he became more and more worried about the situation inside. He simply chose to wait here all the time. Fortunately, she was finally here. Looking at Yu's happy and excited face, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh and handed the box over. "I've already said that Lord Ming doesn't have to wait here. I'll naturally come out after I've replicated everything." Yu hurriedly took the box. When he heard Chu Luiyue's words, he suddenly came back to his senses and looked shocked. You've really," Chu Luiyue smiled. "Lord Yu checked it personally." Mingshu swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty and opened the box with trembling hands. It wasn't that he didn't trust Chu Luiyue, but this matter was just too unbelievable. Mingshu took out the 2 books that Chu Luiyue had replicated and looked at them carefully. Every time he turned a page, the shock in his heart increased. In the end, he was so shocked that he couldn't speak for a long time. All of them, she had actually replicated them all. How long had it taken? Chu Luiyue chuckled and asked. Lord Yu, if there's no problem, I'll take my leave first. Yu hurriedly stepped aside and said, Madam, you should go back and rest after expending so much energy. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up slightly as she shook her head. Lord Yu, you've misunderstood. I don't intend to go back and rest. Then Yu, I'm going to the star path. These few simple words caused Yu's heart to tremble. You're going to the star path and enter the palace of the illusory god? Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded. She had waited for too long before. Now, she didn't want to wait any longer. Chapter 2356. Ming Shu was shocked and didn't know what to say. After a while, he stammered, But you've just finished these and need to rest. Even if she wanted to go to the Star Road, it would be better to rest first, right? Chu Luiyue's smile deepened. That's not necessary. It's just right to go now. On one hand, she had just copied all the Xian formations and mastered them. She was in her best state. On the other hand, she didn't know why, but she didn't feel tired after looking at the last Xian formation. Instead, she felt more energetic. At first, she didn't want to go directly, but now it seemed that the situation was progressing more smoothly than expected. Then, it wasn't a bad idea to strike while the iron was hot. Seeing that Chu Luiyue had made up her mind, Ming Shu couldn't persuade her anymore. Wait a moment, I'll go with you. As he spoke, he hurriedly returned the box to the room and followed her out. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Lord Ming Shu, you don't have to go through so much trouble, Ming Shu explained. Madam, since you can copy all the Xian formations here, then you should be able to finish the Star Road this time. You have to know that no one has done it since the 7th Divine Envoy. Of course, he wanted to witness it with his own eyes. Moreover, this was Madam. Chu Luiyue thought about it and agreed. Not only Ming Shu, but everyone in the illusory god palace would probably come after hearing the news, as long as she could finish the Star Road. She nodded. Lord Ming Shu, please? When Chu Luiyue and Ming Shu arrived at the Star Road, there weren't many people here. It was very deserted. Ming Shu explained, since Mu Yafeng was found to have cheated, everyone has been more cautious. Chu Luiyue nodded. She came to the place where she stopped last time and looked forward. The Star Road was long and flickering. The remaining Xian formations were the most complicated ones in the entire Star Road. But to her, it was something that had been deeply engraved in her mind. She held her breath and raised her finger gently. In the next moment, several streams of light flew out from her fingertips and intertwined in the air. So fast. Ming Shu was shocked. This was a great Grandmaster Xian formation. Yet, she was able to execute it so easily and smoothly. No wonder she could complete the entire mythical flame diagram in such a short period of time. She should have already memorized every single Xian formation on it, right? Soon, a stream of light flew up and suddenly bloomed above her head. Bang! This sound instantly spread far and wide. Without any hesitation, Chu Luiyue continued to move forward and started to set up the second Xian formation. At the same time, many people in the illusory god palace noticed the commotion. Is someone walking on the star path? Who is it? Why now of all times? Great Grandmaster Xian formation, bang! Many people had yet to react when they saw the second Xian formation blossoming in midair. This time, everyone became excited. This speed is even faster than Mu Yafeng's. Don't mention Mu Yafeng. She cheated. That's why I'm so shocked. In this illusory god palace, who is more talented than Mu Yafeng? Wait, why does the person I'm knocking on look familiar? It looks like Shangguan Yu? A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Everyone knew that Chu Luiyue's performance on the star path was indeed more outstanding than Mu Yafeng's. But the current situation was a little exaggerated. I remember that she stopped after entering the Great Grandmaster realm. Why is she starting again now? So fast, could it be that she used some method like Mu Yafeng? Hiss. That's not possible, right? Mu Yafeng and the 7th Divine Envoy were just punished because of this. How could she go against the rules and commit a crime? Besides, there shouldn't be anyone who can help her, right? Let's go take a look. Xiao Ran also heard the commotion and ran over without thinking. On the way, Chu Luiyue actually broke 2 more Xian formations in succession. When they arrived, there were already many people gathered here. Everyone's gaze was focused on Chu Luiyue. Bang! Another Xian formation soared into the sky, shining brilliantly. The crowd who had rushed over fell into silence and could only stare blankly. Everything that was happening in front of them was far beyond their imagination, so much so that they didn't even know what to say. Chu Luiyue turned a blind eye to all of this. Her expression was calm and persistent. Under her feet, the Xian formations lit up one after another, reflecting a dazzling light in her eyes. Looking from afar, on the star path, light flickered. And the woman in red, as if she was stepping on the river of stars, moved forward. At the heavenly gate, Wu Yao brought the 2 girls to the place. Standing in front of the gate, Wu Yao looked at the heavenly gate and frowned. Aunt 11 and Xiao Ran looked at each other. "Fifth brother, is there a problem with the heavenly gate?" Wu Yao touched his chin and nodded thoughtfully. "Think there is?" Aunt 12 asked softly. "Fifth brother, what's the problem?" Wu Yao said seriously, "This heavenly gate seems to have not been cleaned for a long time." The 2 of them, what kind of problem was this? Wu Yao clasped his hands. He didn't know why, but he just felt that something was wrong with this gate. "Look, the angle of this gate is wrong." Aunt 11 was silent for a moment. "Fifth brother, if you don't go in, we'll leave first." Wu Yao coughed and hurriedly said, Don't. Let's go together. Chapter 2357. As the 3 of them spoke, a figure walked out from behind the barrier of the divine gate. It was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. He wore a blue robe and had an arrogant expression. He was holding a book in one hand and a pure gold feather in the other. Wu Yao hesitated when he saw him. "May I ask if you are the 7th messenger?" He remembered that his master had mentioned that the 7th messenger of the palace of the illusory god, Jinyun Lai, was in charge of guarding the divine gate. The young man frowned. "No. I am the 11th messenger, Qiu Tong. The 7th messenger is no longer in charge of guarding the divine gate." Wu Yao and the others looked at each other. It seemed that something had happened in the palace of the illusory god. But this 11th messenger did not seem to be easy to talk to, so they did not ask. On the other hand, Qiu Tong's eyes were filled with disdain as she glanced at them. "The 3 of you are exalted gods. How did you get here?" Logically speaking, only Her Eminence could cross the illusory god ocean and reach the divine gate. The other exalted gods who had come before were only able to do so with Her Eminence's help. This was the first time that 3 exalted gods had come at the same time. Aunt 11 asked coldly, "We have our own ways. We are already here. Do you still need to ask?" Qiu Tong choked. He was a little angry, but seeing that the other party was a little girl, he did not want to continue arguing. As the divine consciousness guarding the divine gate, I naturally have to ask. How could these outsiders be so arrogant? Wu Yao saw this and immediately tried to smooth things over. 11th messenger, don't misunderstand. My sister is young and straightforward. Please don't mind her. We did use a divine artifact to get here. This shouldn't affect anything, right?" Qiu Tong suppressed the anger in her heart and opened the book. "Wu Yao." Qiu Tong raised his hand and the golden feather swept across Wu Yao's forehead. It was empty. Qiu Tong frowned. No bloodline totem? He had heard that many cultivators without bloodline totem had come recently. He did not expect to meet one himself. He glanced at the 2 girls standing behind Wu Yao. "You 2 come forward as well." Aunt 11 walked forward nonchalantly while Aunt 12 grabbed her sleeve nervously. Aunt 11 turned to look at her. "We just don't have a bloodline totem. What are we afraid of?" "That's true." 12th mother thought about it and felt that it was very reasonable. Only then did she relax a little. Anyway, there was nothing to be afraid of. What was there to be afraid of? She then looked at Qiu Tong and said softly, "Dear Divine Envoy, the 3 of us don't have it. It doesn't matter whether you test it or not. It was better not to waste the effort." Qiu Tong was speechless. What's wrong with these people now? He didn't have a bloodline totem, so why did he seem so proud? This is not something to be proud of. Originally, he wanted to ridicule him a little, but now that the other party had put it this way, he really couldn't spit out half a word. The hand holding the ancestor's golden feather gradually tightened. Name. Aunt 11. 12 Nyang. Chiao Tong quickly wrote down the names of the two people on the booklet, then took out 3 dumplings and handed them over. This is dumplings. Aunt 11 didn't wait for him to finish. She raised her hand and took the items over. I've heard of them before. She kept one for herself and tied it around her waist. Then, she handed one to Wu Yao and tied the last one for 12 Nyang. After that, she looked at Chiao Tong. Now, can we go in? Chiao Tong was speechless. The other party was so fierce that he was momentarily stunned. Aunt 11 said impatiently, "We're in a hurry." This sentence reminded Chiao Tong. He glanced at them suspiciously. You guys are from Shangguanyu? Wu Yao laughed. You're really good, 11th Divine Envoy. You guessed it? Chiao Tong gritted his teeth. Was there a need to guess? They also didn't have a bloodline totem and were equally arrogant. There was really only one of them, no one else. Let's go in. He closed the booklet and didn't want to talk to them anymore. He turned around and left. Wu Yao winked at the two girls and quickly followed after him. Hey, 11th Divine Envoy, can I trouble you to ask where our master is now? Chiao Tong's expression turned colder. He didn't even turn around. Can't you see for yourselves? How can we see? Wu Yao was talking when he suddenly heard a sound in front of him. Bang. He subconsciously looked up and saw a profound formation slowly blossoming in midair. This is, Master is just in front. As Aunt 11 spoke, she pulled Aunt 12 and walked forward. It seemed like they came at the right time. Wu Yao was about to follow when he suddenly remembered something. He looked back at the divine gate and frowned. The heavenly gate was indeed very awkward to look at. Fifth brother, what are you looking at? Seeing that Wu Yao did not follow, 12th Nyang looked back and raised her voice to shout. Of course, her voice was still very soft. Wu Yao looked away. They're coming. The 3 of them walked forward along the star path. Many people had already gathered on both sides of the star path. At first glance, it was crowded. But it was very quiet. Everyone seemed to have a tacit understanding. They kept silent and only stared at the figure on the star path, as if they were afraid of disturbing something. Wu Yao walked forward with the 2 girls. Because the 3 of them looked very unfamiliar, people gradually began to notice them. Chu Luiwei suddenly noticed something and looked back. When she saw the 2 faces that she hadn't seen for a long time, she was delighted. 11 Wolf, why are you here suddenly? Come here. Everyone heard and understood. So they knew each other. Aunt 11 pulled 12 Nyang forward and stood beside Chu Luiwei. Master. The 2 girls' faces were filled with longing and joy. Aunt 11 smiled, but 12 Nyang's eyes were already filled with tears. Master, my sister and I missed you so much. Chu Luiwei looked at the 2 and felt very emotional. These 2 girls were only a little older than little 13. When the incident happened, they were only 14 years old. In the blink of an eye, they became slim and graceful girls. Wu Yao also came over. Master. Chu Luiwei was a little surprised. Wu Yao, why are you? Wasn't he guarding the gate realm in Peach Blossom Cove? Thinking of this, Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat and she frowned slightly. Could it be that there? Wu Yao met her gaze and nodded imperceptibly. Chu Luiwei thought for a while and said, Wu Yao, take the 2 of them and wait. I'll be done here soon. Wu Yao responded. However, the onlookers all revealed looks of shock. Almost done? What did that mean? Chapter 2358. Was she planning to stop after a while, or bang? Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze and quickly drew another Xian formation. As another ray of light bloomed on top of her head, she lifted her feet and continued forward. Aunt 11 looked towards the end of the star path and narrowed her eyes. Master had made up his mind to go there this time? Suddenly, 12 Nyang gently tugged on her sleeve. Aunt 12 turned around. Sister, Aunt 12 still had tears in her eyes and her nose and eyes were red. She leaned forward and whispered, "Sister, is that the palace of the illusory god?" Aunt 11 nodded. "It must be." Aunt 12 pursed her lips. A dark light flashed in Aunt 11's eyes. "Do you want to go in and take a look?" Aunt 12 gently nodded and blushed as if she was embarrassed. "I think I was thinking too much." On the way, she had heard from fifth brother that the palace of the illusory god was very powerful and not everyone could enter. Even her master had not been able to enter, let alone her. Aunt 11 said, "I want to too." Aunt 12 was stunned and did not speak. The two of them were twins. Although their personalities were different, they always had the same mind. Just like now, even if they did not speak, they knew what the other was thinking. They both wanted to enter the palace of the illusory god and take a look. Aunt 11 frowned and felt a little strange, because this idea came out of nowhere. But when Master finished walking the star path, he could enter. Maybe they could find a chance later. Right at this moment, an extremely joyful voice suddenly sounded. "Sister 11. Sister 12. The voice was soft and sweet. Even if they did not see the person, just hearing the voice made many people's hearts melt. Many people looked in the direction of the voice and saw a delicate and graceful figure coming towards them. As she walked, the colorful clouds danced and the broken jade tinkled. She was really beautiful. It was little Hachi. She was very fast and in the blink of an eye, she was in front of Aunt 11. "Oh, look at how beautiful my two sisters have become after not seeing them for a few years." Little Hachi's eyes lit up. She reached out and pinched the two girls' cheeks. "I, Sister 8, missed you so much." Lady 12 blushed. "Sister 8, we miss you too." It was rare for Aunt 11 to nod her head. "How is Sister 8? Little Hachi smiled and rolled her eyes. When has Sister 8 ever had a bad life? Even in this illusory god palace, she was still very happy and carefree. Especially after she had slapped the 8th divine emissary Shu Jing a few days ago, her mood had become even better. "Are you hungry? Sister 8 specially prepared a lot of delicious food for you guys." Aunt 11 said, "Thank you, Sister 8. We had already eaten our fill at third brother's place before we came." Little Hachi clicked her tongue and shed tears of sympathy for Sanson. Based on his stinginess, wouldn't his heart and liver be in pain if these two girls went there? She touched their hair. "Don't worry, there are countless treasures on the herb mountain here. Eat as much as you want." Lady 12 quickly waved her hand with a red face. "Sister 8, this won't do. I said before that I can only eat until I'm 80 to 90% full. I can't eat as I please." If she really did that, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to control her strength. Little Hachi scratched her nose. "Don't worry, with Sister 8 here, I can do whatever I want." Just as she finished speaking, another sound came from the front. Bang! Another Xian formation was successfully cast by Chu Luiyue. Little Hachi looked up with bright eyes. "Master, are you planning to finish the star path?" Seeing this, the surrounding people couldn't help but whisper, "Isn't this speed too fast?" The next one will be a Grandmaster Xian formation that starts with the word heaven. Comparisons are odious. Even if he's cheating, he can't cast so many Xian formations in succession so smoothly, right? Looking at this formation, he's really planning to comprehend all the Xian formations and enter the illusory god palace? Look, the 5th divine envoy is here. The voice in the crowd instantly startled everyone, and they all turned their heads to look at the source of the voice. A young man in black who looked to be 27 or 28 years old was walking out of the illusory god palace. His figure was tall and straight, and he was imposing without being angry. It was the 5th divine envoy, Ruan Jianfeng. In fact, he already knew about the movements on the Star Road. He just thought that Chu Luiyue would stop after walking for a while, so he didn't come. After all, he wasn't a Xian master like the 7th divine envoy. The 1st divine envoy had temporarily handed the Star Road to him, so he was only responsible for the Star Road to prevent any accidents. As for the others, he didn't know much, so he naturally couldn't interfere too much. But seeing that Chu Luiyue kept moving forward without any intention of stopping, he finally realized that something was wrong and finally moved. Chu Luiyue raised her eyes slightly and glanced at him. Seeing that he didn't seem to have any intention of continuing, she quickly retracted her gaze. The fifth divine envoy's sudden appearance was obviously just to see if she could complete the Star Road. Then, just let him watch. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and looked at the Xian formation in front of her. Heaven illumination illusory formation, she muttered softly. She had a deep impression of this Xian formation, because when she first came to the illusory god palace, she happened to encounter Mu Yafeng comprehending this Xian formation. More importantly, this was also the first Xian formation on the Heaven Scroll. Looking at the extremely familiar patterns, Chu Luiyue's emotions surged as countless memories surfaced one after another. Back then, she didn't know that this was the so-called Great Grandmaster Xian formation. She only knew that De Bao asked her to memorize it. For this Heaven Illumination illusory formation, she was in the Red Moon Desert, under the scorching sun, drawing it on the sand over and over again. Even she couldn't remember how many times she tried before she finally memorized it. Now that she thought about it, all that was left in her memory was the wind that carried the coarse sand, the warmth that swept across her face and body. And when she finally succeeded in writing it down, De Bao's rare sentence, "Very good." He almost never praised her. He was always extremely picky and strict. Therefore, she remembered those two words for a very long time. For a very long time, she only knew that she was learning from De Bao, but she didn't even know what she was learning. Until many years later, when she had even experienced life and death, she finally understood that he had been planning for this day since then. Chu Luiyue lightly exhaled, and several rays of light flew out from her fingers. Every ray of light seemed to know their position clearly. They quickly gathered together and outlined the shape of a Xian formation. Before the crowd could even see it clearly, they only saw a flash of light in front of her. Then, an indescribable pressure descended, bang. Heaven illumination illusory formation, break. Chapter 2359. All the noise disappeared in an instant. The surrounding space seemed to have solidified, and everyone's expression froze. Everything was like a frozen picture. Only little Hachi and a few others were happy. Master is so powerful. Aunt 11 turned her head and said seriously, "It seems that Master will be able to bring us to the illusory god palace soon." Aunt 12 was very happy. Her lips curled into a sweet smile as she said softly, "Yes." Although their voices were not loud, the people around them could still hear them. Xiao Ran's neck stiffened as he looked at them with a complicated expression. A few seconds ago, he might have laughed at these two girls for speaking nonsense, but now, he actually felt that it was not impossible. He had stayed in the illusory god palace for too long and had seen many geniuses. There were also many who had tried to complete the Star Road, but none of them had succeeded. At first, he thought that Mu Yafeng had suddenly become enlightened and had a chance to succeed. But in the end, it turned out that she had cheated. Not only did she lose, but she also implicated the seventh divine envoy. She was quite powerful. But Chu Luiyue's current state was obviously different from Mu Yafeng. These Xian formations, she did not hesitate at all. With just a glance, she was able to solve them smoothly and smoothly. It was as if she had a card up her sleeve. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered something and walked a few steps to the side to stand beside Jue. "Master Jue." Mingshu was concentrating on watching Chu Luiyue solve the Xian formation. When he heard this, he suddenly quivered. Xiao Ran? What's wrong?" Xiao Ran lowered his voice and asked. "Nothing, I just have something to ask Master Mingshu." He raised his chin. "I saw that Master Mingshu accompanied you here before? Did you just come out of Zhenbao Pavilion?" He knew that Chu Luiyue had been in Zhenbao Pavilion recently. Mingshu nodded, "Yes." Then, Xiao Ran thought for a while and asked, "That Xian formation, how's her copying?" Seeing that this Heaven Illumination illusory formation could not trap her, it was obvious that she had solved it before. If he guessed correctly, Chu Luiyue might have already copied the corresponding profound formation. Mingshu's expression became a little strange. The entire mythical flame diagram had been copied. What could he say? Seeing Zhue's expression, Xiao Ran was at a loss. Although this matter should not be publicized at this time, there was nothing that could not be said, right? Furthermore, everyone knew that he, Xiao Ran, was only left with the last profound formation that he had yet to decipher. This matter would not affect his interests. Ming Shu hesitated for a long time before he finally said, "Just watch." Xiao Ran blinked, then suddenly realized something. What he meant by that, the profound formations that Chu Luiyue had deciphered had all been copied. Bang. At this moment, Chu Luiyue had successfully deciphered the second profound formation that started with the word heaven. The resplendent light was still gradually blooming above her head, but her expression was calm. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and took a step forward. Continue. This commotion was really too big. Soon, everyone in the illusory god palace knew about it. Many people went to see it for themselves. In the sky, figures flashed by, all of them heading toward the Star Road. Not far from the illusory god palace's entrance, Mu Yafeng was kneeling alone. Her legs were completely numb, and she could barely feel anything. Hearing the sound, she subconsciously looked up. At first, she did not pay much attention to it, but when she realized that the profound formations were being deciphered at an astonishing speed, she realized that something was wrong. She did not need to look or guess. Almost instantly, she knew who was the one who had caused such a huge commotion. Mu Yafeng knew all the Grandmaster-level Xian masters in the illusory god palace. Other than Chu Luiyue, who else could it be? As streaks of flowing light soared into the sky and transformed into profound formations in midair, Mu Yafeng's attitude gradually changed from being a bystander to shock and disbelief. She looked in the direction of the Star Road in shock, almost suspecting that she had seen wrongly. How could there be someone who could decipher so many profound formations in such a short time? He was even faster than her back then. Even if Chu Luiyue had the mythical flame diagram, it shouldn't be like this. When Chu Luiyue used the heaven-swapping reflection illusory formation, Mu Yafeng became even more emotional and fainted. She fell to the ground with a dull thud. Not far away, Ruan Jianfeng, who was standing at the end of the Star Road, heard the sound and glanced over. His face was cold and expressionless, and he quickly retracted his gaze. At the same time, everyone in the illusory god palace was also alarmed. "It's you." Dumpling was walking when she suddenly sensed a familiar aura and shouted in surprise. Without thinking, she walked toward the illusory god palace's entrance with her short legs. But before she could take 2 steps, she was stopped by Yu Qian. "You can't go." Dumpling looked up and saw Yu Qian's unquestionable expression. She knew it wouldn't be easy to win. Yu Qian thought that Dumpling would make a fuss, but unexpectedly she nodded. "I won't go." Just as Yu Qian found it strange, Dumpling put her hands on her waist and snorted. "I'll just wait here for Ayu to come in." She couldn't go out, so wouldn't it be fine as long as Ayu came in? Chapter 2360. Yu Qian sneered. "You seem to have a lot of confidence in her." In all these years, Jin Yunlai was the only person in the Illusion God Palace who had relied on her own strength to complete the Star Passage and enter the Palace of the Illusion God. This alone was enough to show how difficult this matter was. Now, Chu Luiyue had only been here for a few months. How could she do it? Dumpling snorted softly. "Because Yu is very powerful. Others might not be able to do it, but she definitely could." Bang! Another sound was heard. Yu Qian turned around to take a look and frowned slightly. This speed was indeed a little fast, Second Oracle. At this moment, a voice was heard. Yu Qian looked at the person who had come. "Yunlai, why are you here?" Jin Yunlai's face was a little haggard. It seemed that she had suffered some setbacks recently. The corners of his lips moved. "I was just a little curious about the situation on the Star Passage, so I wanted to take a look." He originally wanted to go out and take a look, but considering that his reputation had been ruined recently, it was inevitable that he would be criticized by many people if he went out, so he gave up the idea. He didn't expect to meet Yu Qian and Dumpling here. His gaze lingered on Dumpling for a moment. Shouldn't she be at Fengming Mountain at this time? Why was she in the palace of the illusion god? But seeing that Yu Qian was accompanying her, he didn't ask any more questions. Dumpling ignored his gaze and found a step to sit down. She rested her chin on her hands and waited patiently. Yu Qian looked at Jin Yunlai, thought for a moment, and asked, "What do you think about the situation in Shangguanyu this time?" Jin Yunlai was the one who had the most right to speak about this. Jin Yunlai hesitated for a moment. "I can only say that she solved the great grandmaster faster than me." Yu Qian's expression froze. When Dumpling said that Chu Luiwei would definitely be able to enter, he did not take it to heart. But if these words came out of Jin Yunlai's mouth, they had to believe it. "So you're saying that she can really break through all the profound formations this time?" Jin Yunlai was silent for a moment before she nodded. Ever since Chu Luiwei started walking the star path, he had been secretly observing him. Therefore, he had long expected this day to come. He just didn't expect that this day would come so quickly. "Looks like the precious treasure pavilion really helped her a lot," Yu Qian muttered. Jin Yunlai knew that he was talking about how Chu Luiwei had been invited by the Precious Treasures Pavilion to copy Xian formations. After all, this was equivalent to giving her the mythical flame diagram. But even if many people obtained the mythical flame diagram, they still couldn't understand it. Chu Luiwei was able to succeed mainly because she was talented enough. Even, he could faintly feel a trace of threat. Jin Yunlai's lips moved, but she still swallowed her words. At this point, there was no point in saying these things. However, even if she can finish walking the star path and break through every profound formation, she still can't enter the illusory god palace. Yu Qian stood with his hands behind his back and said lightly. Dumpling looked up and glared at him. Yu Qian laughed, but there was no smile in his eyes. People without a bloodline totem will eventually be stopped outside. This was different from those refining saints. Even if the refining saints themselves did not have a bloodline totem, if they could refine a sacred weapon, it meant that they had taken an aura from the chaos divine jade. Relying on that aura, they could also enter the illusory god palace. Suli was like that. But for Chu Luiwei to enter as a Xian master, it was impossible. Time passed slowly. Chu Luiwei walked forward step by step. At this point, the remaining profound formations on the star path all started with the word heaven. In the eyes of others, this part was the most complicated and difficult. But to Chu Luiwei, it was just displaying the profound formations imprinted in the depths of her mind. Her divine power reserves were extremely abundant, especially after she had found the third zither score. And the most important thing was that after she started to display the heaven profound formation, not only did her mental power and strength not suffer a huge loss, but it seemed to be constantly improving. In the beginning, she didn't really realize this, but as she unleashed more and more profound formations, everything gradually became clear. The surrounding people looked at this scene and were all speechless. Many people felt bitter in their mouths. When they looked at each other, they could only see the deep powerlessness and despair in each other's eyes. When someone was just a little bit better than you, you might be envious and jealous, but when this person was much better than you, you would not even have the thought of comparing. Now, they felt this way towards Chu Luiwei. It was an indisputable fact that she could finish walking the star path. Rays of light shot into the sky and bloomed in midair. Chu Luiwei walked forward step by step. After an unknown period of time, she finally reached the end of the star path. She stopped and looked forward. In front of her, there was one last profound formation. If she continued forward, it would be the gate of the illusory god palace. And Wan Jianfeng was standing there. He stared at Chu Luiwei with a sharp gaze, as if he wanted to see through her. Unfortunately, the woman in front of him was beautiful and smiling. Her eyes were deep and calm like the starry night, and it was impossible to see any emotion in them. "You do have some ability," he said. Even though he was not a Xian master, he knew how difficult it was to finish this star path. Now, as long as she could decipher the last Xian formation, it would be considered complete. Chu Luiwei smiled. "Thank you for the praise, fifth divine envoy." Wan Jianfeng's gaze moved down and landed on the Tuan Xnz tied to her waist. Unfortunately, even if you crack the last profound formation, you still can't enter the illusory God Palace. Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows. It won't be too late for fifth divine envoy to say this when I'm really rejected. Wan Jianfeng took a step back. He wanted to see where Chu Luiwei's confidence came from. Chu Luiwei shrugged and lowered her head to play with the Tuan Xnz. Because of this thing, she had been looked down upon and ridiculed in the illusory God Palace. However, it didn't matter. As long as one's fist was strong enough, everyone would learn to shut up. She turned her gaze and looked at the last profound formation. Unlike other Xian formations, this Xian formation's surface area was obviously much larger, and its patterns were also much more complicated. Ordinary people would find it hard to take a few more glances, let alone crack it. Chu Luiwei lifted her sleeves and sat down cleanly. Everyone looked at each other when they saw this. Is she planning to waste time? Someone asked in a low voice. I've heard that even the seventh divine emissary took a total of 10 years to activate the final Xian formation. I wonder, how long will she take this time? 10 years is considered short. Have you forgotten that Xiao Ran has been trapped here for over 10,000 years? But Shengguan Yu's performance isn't much worse than the seventh divine envoy's, right? I guess. Look, she's starting. Chapter 2361. Chu Luiwei sat cross-legged, held her breath, and raised her palm. Her slender and fair fingertips seemed to dance lightly, and a stream of light instantly flew out. In the next moment, the stream of light transformed into a huge ring in front of her. From afar it was dazzling. She's actually going to start from the outline of the Xian formation? The more complicated the Xian formation, the more it should start from the middle, right? That Xian formation is so complicated. She should first fix the framework, then draw the outline bit by bit. If there's even the slightest mistake, she will lose everything. I really don't know what she's thinking. Because of Chu Luiwei's actions, many people fell into shock and confusion. Xiao Ran also furrowed his brows. If she did this, wouldn't it be even more troublesome? Chu Luiwei ignored them. With a light wave of her other hand, several streams of light flew out and entered the ring. She didn't stop moving, and the outline of the void was quickly filled up. Throughout the entire process, she didn't pause at all, as if she had already memorized every detail of the Xian formation. In fact, it was indeed so. As Xiao Ran watched, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. His gaze focused, and he began to carefully observe every movement of Chu Luiwei's hands. This seemed different from what he had understood before. His heart suddenly started beating faster. If Chu Luiwei was right, then he seemed to know why he was trapped in the last Xian formation for so long. Thinking of this, Xiao Ran unconsciously walked forward. Jie quickly pulled him back. Hey, Xiao Ran, you can't go any further. The position they were standing at was already the closest to the front. If they wanted to continue forward, they had to walk the star road. Xiao Ran stopped in his tracks, but his gaze still didn't move away from Chu Luiwei. To be precise, it was the Xian formation in front of her. Jie looked at him strangely. Xiao Ran, what's wrong with you? Nothing. Xiao Ran muttered, his eyes shining. I might have to follow this girl into the illusory God Palace. Jie? So sudden? He couldn't enter for tens of thousands of years, but now, he suddenly thought of something and quickly turned to look at Chu Luiwei. Could it be Xiao Ran learned something from Chu Luiwei? She's breaking the last Xian formation. In the illusory God Palace, Jin Yunlai spoke softly with a complicated expression. Yu Qian was expressionless. In his opinion, even if Chu Luiwei, she still wouldn't be able to enter the illusory God Palace. So, what was there to be concerned? Jin Yunlai knew what he was thinking and sighed to himself. At first, he thought he was, but now, he. He had never seen anyone who could break through all the Xian formations in such a short period of time. And was. But just now, he felt that something was wrong. Now, he was even more certain that Chu Luiwei's situation was different from the others. Previously, after Mu Yafeng broke 7 Grandmaster Xian formations in a row on the Star Passage, She stopped because of the huge consumption of strength and spirit. She rested on the spot for a while before continuing. But later on, he could clearly feel her exhaustion and her lack of strength. Even though he had taught her a lot at that time, it was still the same. But Chu Luiyue, she seemed to be like a fish in water on this star passage. He had never seen such a person. Therefore, no one could say for sure what unexpected things would happen next. The Xian formation in front of Chu Luiyue was filled up bit by bit. Countless lines intertwined and were very delicate, but she didn't make any mistakes. Every step was precise. Even Ming Shu, who had long known that Chu Luiyue had finished copying the mythical flame diagram, was so shocked that he was speechless. Because the mythical flame diagram didn't have this last Xian formation. But looking at her, it was as if she had already drawn it thousands of times. Xiao Ran's eyes lit up. In his mind, it was as if a door that had been closed for a long time was suddenly opened. Following Chu Luiyue's movements, he also carried out the same simulation in his mind. Although it wasn't as smooth as Chu Luiyue's, it still went smoothly in the end. Xiao Ran's blood seemed to be boiling. No one had been trapped by the Xian formation for a longer time than him, so he could react faster than the others to what Chu Luiyue was doing. Sure enough. His method of breaking the Xian formation was wrong from the beginning. If he chose the wrong direction from the beginning, how could he reach the destination? The waiting time seemed to be especially unbearable. But to Chu Luiyue, everything seemed to pass in a flash. She ignored everything around her. Only the Xian formation was left in her eyes. The pattern was gradually drawn, delicate and accurate. Chu Luiyue seemed to have entered a subtle state. She didn't even need to look. With a raise of her hand, those flowing lights would automatically go to their original positions. No one would believe that the Xian formation was the easiest one for her. Everything was as natural as nature itself. Finally, at a certain moment, Chu Luiyue's hand touched the center. Buzz. In an instant, the Xian formation shone brightly. Countless Xian formations lit up in succession on the entire star passage. It was like a galaxy in the dark night, incomparably bright. Chapter 2362. The sky was filled with sparkling stars. It was so bright that it was hard to look at it directly. Many people on both sides of the star road subconsciously raised their hands to cover their eyes, but they couldn't bear to really block their line of sight for fear of missing something. Although they had already expected this outcome, it was still inconceivable when it actually happened. Star Road. In the long thousands of years, other than the seventh divine envoy Jinyan Lai, she was the only one who had walked all the way from the Heaven Gate to the illusory God Palace and cracked all the Xian formations. Furthermore, he had accomplished all of this in such a short period of time. After a short silence, little Hachi was the first to react. Her beautiful eyes sparkled as she screamed, "Ah, I knew it! I knew Master was the best!" Her cheeks were faintly red due to her excitement, which made her enchanting and charming face even more moving. She pinched the cheeks of the two girls beside her. "Quick, tell me, wasn't Master the best?" Aunt 11's lips curled into a smile. "Of course." Aunt 12's face flushed red. She clenched her small fist and waved it around. Finally, she squeezed out a sentence, "Master is the best." Little Hachi was satisfied. Her face was filled with joy, and she couldn't hide it. Of course, she didn't plan to hide it. Wuxiao looked at the three of them from the side and shook his head helplessly. However, his eyes were filled with excitement. He had heard many rumors about the illusory God Palace and knew that the Star Road was very difficult. Not to mention them, even the so-called geniuses in the illusory God Palace couldn't succeed. But now, Master had really done it. Naturally, he was proud of it. I know. A white light flashed through Xiao Ran's mind. He was so excited that he was almost incoherent. He grabbed Jue beside him. "That's it. So that's it." Ever since Chu Luiyue started to crack the last Xian formation, he faintly realized where his problem was. With the completion of the Xian formation, the entire Star Road was lit up by her, and he finally understood. Jue was still immersed in shock. After being pulled by Xiao Ran, he suddenly felt dizzy. Xiao Ran took a deep breath. I know how to break the final Xian formation. Ming Shu was dumbfounded. Don't tell me it's because, did he have an epiphany after seeing Madam's actions just now? Xiao Ran nodded. Yes. He loosened his grip and was about to go forward, but then he thought better of it and stopped. Let's wait until she finishes her business here and enters the illusory God Palace. Although he knew the way to break it, it would still be quite difficult for him to actually implement it. In any case, it was impossible for him to be faster than Chu Luiyue. It was very likely that he would have to spend a lot of time. But, in the end, there was still hope to take this step. He was completely dumbfounded. What was going on? Not only did Madame decipher all the Xian formations on the star passage, she even enlightened Xiao Ran? His expression became even more subtle. At this moment, he finally realized that the Madame's strength seemed to be even more shocking than he had expected. Gradually, the onlookers also came back to their senses. They looked at Chu Luiyue with very complicated expressions. Shock, disbelief, envy, admiration. At this point, any words would be pale and powerless. Anything they said would seem sour and useless. She had completed the star passage with her own strength. There was nothing they could do about it. At this moment, the doubts and ridicule they had for her before had become a loud slap to their own faces. It was a burning pain. Chu Luiyue raised her eyes and looked at the Xian formation that was rotating silently in front of her. She gently exhaled. Finally, she didn't let him down. Ruan Jianfeng frowned. He thought that Chu Luiyue would be trapped in the final Xian formation. Even if she could break it, it would take several years. Who knew? All of this was indeed outside of his expectations. Fifth Divine Envoy. Chu Luiyue tilted her head, and her lips curved up slightly. Now, can I enter the illusory God Palace? Ruan Jianfeng paused and nodded. As long as you can open the door of the illusory God Palace, it will be considered a success. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. It seemed that the door wasn't that easy to open. She lowered her eyes and glanced at Tuan Xnz tied to her waist, then her lips curved into a smile. Okay. After saying that, she took a step forward. In an instant, the Xian formation floating in the air turned into countless streams of light and entered the star passage. Chu Luiyue came to the door, raised her head slightly and looked over. Coincidentally, she had seen this door before. Although it was just an illusion at that time, it had left a deep impression on her. At this moment, standing in front of the real thing, the familiar and strange feeling came again. Everything was so real. Even the marks on the door that had been eroded by the wind and frost of time, and the heavy and vast pressure, it was right in front of her eyes and within reach. Chu Luiyue reached out her hand. Her slender and soft palm gently placed on the door. Buzz. Almost at the instant her hand touched the door, a buzzing sound suddenly rang out. The hearts of the onlookers hung in the air. Those without a bloodline totem would encounter obstacles when trying to enter the illusory God Palace. It seemed that Chu Luiyue was also the same. A pattern suddenly appeared under Chu Luiyue's palm. Chu Luiyue looked at it. There seemed to be a pattern that gradually appeared on the door. Yu is coming in. Seeing that the last Xian formation was successfully broken, Dumpling jumped up with joy and excitement. Yu Qian frowned. Jin Yunlai's hands slowly clenched. At this moment, everyone in the illusory God Palace heard the noise and looked towards the door. Nan Jinshu hurriedly walked out and happened to meet Su Li at the corner. Nan family head, what a coincidence. Su Li smiled warmly and gently. You also know that little Yu just finished walking the star passage and is coming in, right? Nan Jinshu choked. Actually, he already knew what was happening outside. At first, he didn't take it to heart, but as Chu Luiyue broke more and more Xian formations, he gradually panicked. Until just now, when Chu Luiyue successfully executed the last Xian formation, he finally couldn't sit still anymore. Thus, he hurriedly came out and wanted to check it out. Who knew that he would run into Su Li? He forced a smile and said, Mr. Su, you're joking. She's not a weapon refining saint and doesn't have a bloodline totem, so she can't come in. I just feel that it's a pity. Is that so? Su Li laughed and tilted her head towards the door. Then I'm afraid that Nan family head will be disappointed. What? Nan Jingshu was stunned. Su Li raised her chin. The door is open. Chapter 2363. Nan Jingshu turned his head instinctively. He could see the situation at the door from where he was standing. Yu Qian and Jin Yunlai were standing in front of the Chaos Holy Jade, looking at the door. Dumpling was there too. If it weren't for the two of them watching, she would have already rushed over to him. Creak. The sound of the door turning could be heard clearly. The door to the Illusion God Palace was pushed open a crack. Nan Jingshu's eyes widened in shock. At this moment, a gust of wind blew. Woo-woo, an indescribable pressure came from all directions, completely enveloping Chu Luiwei as if it was going to crush her into pieces. A gust of wind swept over, lifting her fine black hair and making the corners of her dress dance. A few strands of hair covered her eyes. Sensing the biting cold aura that rushed out from the crack in the door, many people looked at each other in dismay. As expected, it was extremely difficult for someone without a bloodline totem to completely open the door. Some people were already shaking their heads. With this situation, Chu Luiwei probably couldn't get in. Inside the door, the crack didn't expand. Everything seemed to have stopped. Nan Jingshu's emotions were in turmoil. He swallowed his saliva with difficulty. His mouth was dry, but in the end he forced a sneer. I don't think so. The door is open, but she has to be able to get in first. Based on the current situation, being able to open the door a crack was already her limit. Su Li's lips curved without a smile. She didn't reply and walked towards the door. Dumpling turned around when she heard the sound. She ran over immediately when she saw Su Li. Mr. Su. Su Li smiled and bent down to pick her up. Mr. Su, you're also here to wait for Ayu, right? Dumpling asked. Su Li smiled gently. Yu Qian's gaze paused on Su Li for a moment before he looked away. His lips curved into a cold smile. These people seemed to have almost blind confidence in Chu Luiwei. He had to admit that for Chu Luiwei to be able to complete the Star Road in such a short time, he did have some ability. But what kind of place was the illusory shrine? She wanted to come in, but that was just a fool's dream. Of course, Su Li could see Yu Qian's disdain. But she didn't care. She just smiled and looked at the door quietly with Dumpling in her arms. Chu Luiwei had said that she wanted to enter the illusory God Palace. Then today, she would definitely be able to enter. If she wanted to do something, then she would definitely succeed. The biting cold pressure came with the wind, and the flesh, tendons, and bones all over his body felt like they were about to be torn apart. Intense pain came from every part of his body. Chu Luiwei's hands trembled slightly. The tongue tied to his waist also swayed in the wind. No one noticed that the words on it had already become incomparably thick without a sound. Chu Luiwei closed his eyes. The sound of a zither suddenly sounded from within her body. Clang. The sound of the zither was bleak, but it contained a powerful aura that pressed forward courageously, sweeping across. At this moment, the pressure that had enveloped her vanished with a loud rumble. She didn't hesitate and suddenly pushed. Bang! The door of the illusory shrine opened. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged. Yu Qian suddenly realized that something was wrong and quickly turned around to take a look. The scene in front of him made his heart sink fiercely. Above the Chaos Holy Jade, sparkling radiance gathered. The scarlet gold flames burning on the top of the surrounding white jade pillars suddenly shook violently. They were like candles in the wind, on the verge of collapse. How could this be? He seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and looked in the direction of the door again. At the open door, a slender and exquisite figure was standing quietly. Her shoulders and back were extremely straight, like a pine tree in the wind, outstanding and unyielding. On her incomparably beautiful face, the pair of eyes that were as deep as the abyss and as bright as the night sky were shining with a bright light. Behind her, the thousands of lights on the Star Road flickered and bloomed passionately, but they were not as dazzling as her. Meeting those eyes, for a moment, Yu Qian's heart suddenly gave birth to an extremely strange feeling. It wasn't the first time he saw Chu Luiwei, but it seemed to be the first time he saw her like this. Cold, arrogant, lonely, indifferent, noble, and high above everyone else. She seemed to be looking over here, but also seemed to be looking through all of this, into the vast and boundless distance. Yu Qian opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but found that at this moment, he couldn't utter a single word. Then, he saw the woman take a step forward, and officially stepped into the illusory shrine. Lightning pool. Under the frozen lightning pool, countless silver and golden tianlei seemed to be frozen, motionless in place. At a certain moment, the wind suddenly rose, and a golden tianlei slowly swam up. Pull one to move the whole body. The heavenly lightning in the surroundings also began to stir. Seeing this, Shijing, who was standing on the shore, suddenly showed some surprise. Logically speaking, the tianlei here shouldn't have recovered yet, right? Then, he suddenly realized something, and turned his head to look in the direction of the illusory shrine. Could it be Qi? More and more tianlei began to stir. From afar, it looked like a dusty chess game that had been sealed for a long time. Suddenly, someone took the chess piece and wanted to change the situation. A figure suddenly flew out from the depths of the lightning pool. It was the fourth divine emissary in charge of guarding here, Mu Dongyu. He was originally peacefully guarding the lightning pool, but when he heard the commotion, he immediately moved. He stood in the air and looked down. When he saw the tianlei begin to stir, he immediately frowned. This movement seemed to be unusual. Seeing Mu Dongyu come, Shijing slowly tightened his grip on the hammer in his hand. Crackle. A few streaks of light flashed past his hammer, making subtle noises. Then, the tianlei that were about to stir quietly quieted down. It was as if an invisible hand had tipped down and covered all the waves. All of these changes happened in the blink of an eye. Just as Mu Dongyu was hesitating whether to report to the illusory shrine, he found that the movement below had disappeared. He frowned, and then looked at Shijing, who was standing on the shore. Chapter 2364. Almost at the same time that he looked over, Shijing also looked over. There was quite the distance between the two, but they could still see each other's expressions. Shijing grinned. Fourth emissary, why are you looking at me like that? Mu Dongyu stared at him for a long time before retracting her gaze. But he was just a god. He thought too much. Worried that something else would happen here, Mu Dongyu didn't leave. Shijing shrugged, weighed the thunder hammer in his hand, and suddenly smiled. The main hall of the palace of the illusory god. Jun Jiuqing knelt in the middle with his eyes closed. His body was covered in a layer of red light, and his aura kept rising. At a certain moment, the buzzing sound finally came. He opened his eyes. In the circular hall on the surrounding walls, dots of starlight gradually lit up and flickered. He said softly, "Finally, it's here." His voice was emotionless, and his face was slightly lowered. His face was hidden in the faint shadow, and couldn't be seen clearly. After a moment, he finally got up and walked outside. In the quiet courtyard, the piled-up leaves suddenly flew up. A sound came from the door, as if someone was preparing to open it. But in an instant, the sound came to an abrupt stop. The courtyard that was silent to the point of desolation once again fell into a deathly silence. When the last Xian formation was drawn, Rong Xiu had already walked out of the room. He stood on the steps with his hands behind his back, and looked in the direction of the palace of the illusory god. There was a deep look in his eyes. Then he closed his eyes. The wind gradually stopped. In the palace of the illusory god, the light on the chaos holy jade gradually dissipated. The golden flames burning on the top of the white jade pillars also calmed down and burned quietly. It was as if everything that happened before was just an illusion. All of the restless changes quietly dissipated, but Yu Qian's brows furrowed even tighter. For some reason, he felt that something was wrong. All the movements seemed to be related to Chu Luiyue. He looked at Chu Luiyue with a sharp gaze, as if he wanted to see through her from the inside out. Chu Luiyue ignored his scrutiny. She just stared straight ahead. The majestic palace was magnificent, noble and sacred. Even though he had seen it once in the Crimson Moon Desert, That was only an illusion after all. It was far from being as real as seeing it with his own eyes and experiencing it personally. She took a deep breath and continued walking. "Ah, you!" Tuanzi directly jumped out of Su Li's arms and ran over with her little feet. Chu Liuyue's lips curled into a smile. He bent over and scooped up Dumpling. It was a soft ball with a hint of sweetness. Indeed, it had been a long time since they last met. Chu Liyue kissed the girl's chubby cheeks. Dumpling hugged her neck and giggled, rubbing its head against her shoulder. "Ah, you, I knew you would definitely be able to come in." Chu Liyue finally remembered something. "By the way, why are you here? Shouldn't Dumpling be at Fengming Mountain?" Dumpling's big black grape-like eyes rolled around as she said in a childish voice, "Because it's boring to stay alone in Fengming Mountain. So I ran over myself. I was planning to walk around and see if there was anything fun, but I just happened to bump into Ah Yu." Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Dumpling obviously had other reasons for coming to the illusory god palace. But this reason didn't seem to be known by others. She pinched Dumpling's nose. "If I had known that our Dumpling was here, I would have definitely come in earlier." "Everyone, isn't this fast?" Yu Qian raised his eyes slightly and looked outside the door. He said coldly. Jianfeng closed the door. Ruan Jianfeng was still shocked that Chu Liyue had actually entered the illusory god palace. Hearing this, he finally came back to his senses. Yes, yes. He walked in and closed the door again, blocking the countless gazes outside. However, when he looked at Chu Liyue again, his expression was extremely complicated. A quarter of an hour ago, he was still certain that Chu Liyue would definitely not be able to enter. But now, as the door of the illusory god palace closed again, the spectators standing on both sides of the Star Road were stunned for a moment before they burst into an uproar. "Shangguan, you really went in? Didn't she not have a bloodline totem?" And just now, the illusory god palace did indeed have the intention to reject her. How come in the blink of an eye? Speaking of which, don't you guys feel that something was wrong just now? At this moment, another person stood on the Star Road. It was Xiao Ran. He didn't care about the various discussions around him. He only rubbed his palms and looked at the last Xian formation on the Star Road with shining eyes. For this step, he had wasted tens of thousands of years, and even he himself was about to give up. Who knew that there would be a twist? After seeing Chu Liyue draw the Xian formation with his own eyes, he finally found a way to break it. Swish! A stream of light flew out from his hand and quickly condensed into a ring. He seriously recalled what he saw just now in his mind. He sighed in his heart and was even filled with admiration for Chu Liyue. She could actually think of such a method, and so naturally too, he muttered softly. If I didn't know that she's not even 20 years old, I would have suspected that she personally created this Xian formation. At this point, he couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. Chapter 2365. Yu Qian stared at Chu Liyue. He kept recalling the scene when she stepped into the palace of the illusory god and frowned. There were too many suspicious points about her. Until now, he still didn't know how she came in. His gaze fell on the Tuan Xnz at her waist. It swayed with the wind, light and neat. There didn't seem to be anything unusual. Chu Liyue followed his line of sight, lowered her head, and smiled. "Second messenger, why are you looking at me like that?" Indeed, this ball of tongue had almost exploded the moment she entered the room. But there was an invisible and powerful force that calmed it down. Unfortunately, that force disappeared quickly and she didn't have time to feel it. Yu Qian said indifferently, "You're the first person to come in without a bloodline totem." Chu Liyue looked at Su Li. "Didn't Mr. Su come in too?" "She's a weapon refining saint. Naturally, she's different. In addition, you're the second person to come in from the Star Road." Of course, he had to pay more attention to such a person. Chu Liyue looked calm and let him size her up. She came in openly through the door. Could it be that these people could chase her out? Su Li walked over with a smile on her face. "Little Yu, congratulations." She knew that she could do it. Chu Liyue also laughed. "I said that I wouldn't let Mr. Su wait here for too long. After coming in, Many things were convenient. For example, investigating the whereabouts of Debao and Lan Xiao. But now was obviously not the time. Chu Luiyue looked around. It was exactly the same as the scene in the Red Moon Desert. However, there was one difference. The palace of the illusory god wasn't covered by the white fog, so she could see more clearly. Finally, her gaze fell on the main hall in front of her. That should be the main hall of the palace of the illusory god. From the corner of her eyes, a figure came into view. Chu Luiyue tilted her head to take a look and instantly smiled. Master Nan, long time no see. How have you been? Nan Jingshu, who was about to leave quietly, suddenly froze. He turned around awkwardly with a very interesting expression on his face. You, Master Yu, what did you call her? Before Chu Luiyue could say anything, the second messenger suddenly spoke. His eyes seemed to be covered in a layer of frost, with a bone-chilling coldness. Nan Jingshu was shocked, and Chu Luiyue raised her brows in confusion. Why did it seem like he didn't like it? But this didn't seem to have anything to do with him? Nan Jingshu swallowed his saliva nervously and replied, yes. Yu's name. Master uses as second messenger he called Yu's Yu was Yu. After all, when Chu Luiyue took over the Peach Blossom Dock in the world of God, that was how everyone addressed her. The Nan family suffered heavy casualties in the Battle of the Peach Blossom Dock. For a long time, Nan Jingshu was traumatized by Chu Luiyue. Even here, logically speaking, he should be more confident than Chu Luiyue. But this woman had a lot of trump cards. Every time he thought she was going to die, she would still be able to fight her way out and make everyone look at her in a different light. Just like now. He didn't expect her to be able to come in. In a moment of nervousness, he called her that. Yu Qian's expression turned even colder. Don't call her that again. If I hear it a second time, yes. Before he could finish, Nan Jingshu had already sensed the severity of the situation and hurriedly responded. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. This was really strange. Wasn't it just calling her Master Yu? It didn't seem like a big deal. Why did Yu Qian care so much? He was the second divine envoy. Logically speaking, he shouldn't care about such a small matter. It was meaningless and unstylish. But looking at his reaction, she lowered her eyes to hide the ripples in her eyes. When she looked up again, her expression had returned to normal. Patriarch Nan, since the second divine envoy said so, you really have to be more careful in the future. Don't cause any trouble for yourself because of me. Nan Jingshu's face turned pale. You. Patriarch Nan, you said you would wait for me in the palace of the illusory god. Now that I see you, Patriarch Nan, you really keep your word. Chu Luiyue smiled. I'm new here, so I don't know much about the palace of the illusory god. I'll have to trouble Patriarch Nan in the future. Nan Jingshu's legs turned to jelly as he complained in his heart. Trouble? Chu Luiyue was already good at fighting in the past. Now that he had comprehended all the Xian formations in the Star Passage, he could be considered a top grandmaster. His combat strength was almost unimaginable. If the two of them really fought, he wouldn't even know how he died. Nan Jingshu forced a smile. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. He couldn't wait to avoid Chu Luiyue in the future. If he knew this would happen, he would have just stayed in his own residence. Why did he have to come here? Patriarch Nan and I are old acquaintances. There's no need to be so polite. Chu Luiyue smiled and said sincerely. Nan Jingshu couldn't wait to run away. It seems like you have some misunderstanding. Yu Qian looked at Chu Luiyue and said, entering the palace of the illusory god through the Star Passage only means that you have the right to enter the palace of the illusory god in the future. It doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want here. There are many places in the palace of the illusory god that you can't go to. Do you understand? Chu Luiyue blinked. I don't really understand. Second divine envoy, please tell me what those places are. I don't want to offend you in the future. Yu Qian's face was cold. He really didn't want to talk to Chu Luiyue, but the current situation. The main hall of the palace of the illusory god is where the divine envoys live. Chu Luiyue nodded. I see, Yu Qian continued. Since you've already entered the palace of the illusory god, I won't say anything else. Once you're here, just focus on your cultivation. Half a year later, those who can't reach the immortal state will be kicked out of the palace of the illusory god. Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows. The qi of heaven and earth here was indeed rich and pure, which was very helpful for cultivation. For most cultivators, the biggest benefit of entering the palace of the illusory god was to increase their chances of reaching the immortal state. Only those who succeeded could continue to stay here, and those who failed would still be kicked out. The survival of the fittest was the most obvious and cruel rule here. Thank you, second divine envoy. Chu Luiwei nodded. Yu Qian's eyes fell on Dumpling. Well, you should go back now. Tuan Zi pouted unhappily and hugged Chu Luiwei's neck, refusing to let go. Yu Qian's eyes were cold. Chu Luiwei patted Dumpling gently. Anyway, I will be here in the future. Tuan Zi, you can come whenever you want. Chapter 2367. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. In the palace of the illusory god, other than the main hall, there were many courtyards. The height of these courtyards was basically the same. In other words, standing here, it was impossible to see the situation inside. But she had just asked such a question. Most importantly, even in the illusion of the Red Moon Desert, she had not been to any other place besides the main hall. In other words, she really should not have known that there was another courtyard in the innermost area. Su Li glanced at Chu Luiwei and immediately smiled. Oh, about this, I had accidentally mentioned it to little you before. Fifth divine envoy, you wouldn't mind, right? Wan Jianfeng glanced at Su Li. Su Li's lips slightly pursed and her eyes were clear. She seemed to be a little nervous. I didn't know where it was at that time. I just casually mentioned it. Wan Jianfeng retracted his gaze and coldly said, that is the residence of the first divine envoy. Without permission, no one is allowed to go near it. If anyone dares to violate it, they will die. Chu Luiwei's eyes narrowed. The residence of the first divine envoy? She once again looked in that direction. Although she could not see anything through the eaves and walls, her heart was still shrouded in an extremely subtle feeling. Why did she say those words just now? After one glance, Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze and looked down slightly. Thank you for your reminder, fifth divine envoy. Seeing that she was indeed curious and did not have any other intentions, Wan Jianfeng finally let this matter pass. After walking for another quarter of an hour, he brought Chu Luiwei and Su Li to a courtyard. From today onwards, you will be living here. Other than the few places that the second divine envoy mentioned, it's best that you don't casually walk around the entire palace of the illusory god. Otherwise, you won't even know when you get into trouble. Wan Jianfeng's voice was as cold as ever. If you cause any trouble, no one will help you. Originally, Chu Luiwei came from the star path. The seventh divine envoy, Jin Yunlai, should have been half her backer. At the very least, she should have been biased towards her. Unfortunately, it was already not easy for him to protect himself. What else could he talk about? Moreover, because he didn't have a bloodline totem, his attitude towards Chu Luiwei had been very cold. But now, Chu Luiwei had relied on his own ability to get in. This was undoubtedly a slap to Jin Yunlai's face. When he saw Chu Luiwei, he wasn't in a good mood either. Therefore, although Chu Luiwei had entered the illusory god palace, his situation was not optimistic. However, Chu Luiwei didn't care. She smiled. I know. Wan Jianfeng didn't stay for too long. He left after giving out the necessary instructions. This time, only Chu Luiwei and Su Li were left at the door. Chu Luiwei watched Wan Jianfeng's figure disappear before saying, Mr. Su, let's talk inside. After entering the courtyard, Chu Luiwei quickly looked around. This place wasn't big and the furnishings were very simple. It was just an ordinary small courtyard, and it seemed that no one had lived here for a long time. Fortunately, it was clean. Chu Luiwei and Su Li entered the house. Just as they closed the door, Su Li couldn't help but ask, Little you, what happened just now? Why did you suddenly ask about the first divine envoy's residence? Chu Luiwei helplessly laughed bitterly. Mr. Su, I really don't know where it is. If I knew, I wouldn't have asked that question. Who didn't know that the first divine envoy had a special identity? Even the other divine envoys didn't dare to offend him. Why would she be so stubborn as to touch this bad luck? Su Li thought about it and agreed. But why did you suddenly ask me that question? I remember that I didn't mention this to you before? Chu Luwei tapped her finger on the armrest and thought for a moment before saying, If I say that I don't know, would Mr. Su believe me? Su Li was startled. What do you mean? Chu Luwei rubbed her forehead. It was really troublesome to explain this matter. It's probably because I left some impression in the Red Moon Desert previously. She changed the topic. Su Li instantly understood. That's right, I almost forgot about this. Obviously she believed Chu Luwei. Chu Luwei changed the topic. Did you find anything here recently? Su Li sighed. There's no substantial progress. Chu Luwei wasn't surprised. From the attitude of the Yuqian and the rest, it could be seen that they were very strict with the palace of the illusory god. Under such circumstances, it was extremely difficult to find out anything. De Bao and Lan Shao must have been locked in an extremely secret place. This matter can't be rushed. It's better to take it slow. No matter what, now that we've entered the palace of the illusory god, we're finally one step closer. Su Li nodded. Nan Jinshu originally planned to return to his residence, but after taking a few steps, he saw Jun Jiuqing walking out of the main palace. He hesitated for a moment but still went over. Family E. Jun Jiuqing's gaze landed on him indifferently. Nan Jinshu suddenly felt a chill in his heart. For some reason, he felt that Jun Jiuqing's state today was a little different from usual. It seemed like he wasn't in a good mood. But didn't he just come out of the main palace? Not many people could have this kind of glory. He didn't have it either. Because of this, Nan Jinshu was envious of him for a long time. So when he saw Jun Jiuqing's current state, he really couldn't understand. However, this wasn't the main point. Family E, Shengguan Yu is here. Jun Jiuqing's expression didn't change. I know. Seeing how calm he was, Nan Jinshu instantly became anxious. Family E, aren't you curious or nervous at all? That's Shengguan Yu we're talking about. Haven't you thought about how she came in without a bloodline totem? Jun Jiuqing didn't say anything. Nan Jinshu gritted his teeth and lowered his voice. The Guqin score. It must be because of the Guqin score. The first two Guqin scores are with her. At first, Nan Jinshu couldn't understand how Chu Luwei broke the rules and successfully entered the illusion god's palace. Until just now, he suddenly realized that it must be because of the Guqin score. That belongs to the illusion god's palace. Since she's already its master, of course she can enter. Nan Jinshu regretted it. He should have thought of this earlier. Otherwise, he wouldn't have offended her like that and dug such a big hole for himself. Now, even if he wanted to make peace, there was no hope. Jun Jiuqing looked a little impatient. I know what you're talking about. What are you trying to say? Nan Jinshu's chest tightened. Why did it seem like Jun Jiuqing didn't care about such an important matter? Chapter 2368. That music score belongs to the illusion god palace. The divine master and the divine envoys haven't done anything yet. What can you do about it? Jun Jiuqing's voice was cold. Nan Jinshu was taken aback and he hurriedly said, It's not that I want to do anything. I'm just curious. The first divine envoy sent 2 divine envoys to the god-slaying mound to look for the 3rd music score, but they haven't returned yet. Are you talking about the 9th and 10th divine envoys? Jun Jiuqing interrupted him with a half-smile. They've returned a long time ago. Don't you know? What? Nan Jinshu was stunned for a moment. He really didn't know. Ever since he fought with Chu Luwei and Mu Hongyu and returned to the illusion god palace, he hadn't left his room. Because what happened that day was simply too humiliating. He had no choice but to wait for things to settle down. That was why he didn't know what was going on outside, including the fact that the 2 divine masters had returned. Not only have they returned, but they're also being punished in the illusion god ocean, Jun Jiuqing said flatly. Nan Jinshu was stunned. He couldn't snap out of his daze for a long time. How is that possible? The two divine envoys were ordered to look for the third music score. Even if they didn't find it, they shouldn't have been punished, right? Then do you know why they were punished? Jun Jiuqing smiled coldly. If you want to know, you can ask them yourself. After he finished speaking, he ignored Nanjin Shu and left. Nanjin Shu wanted to ask him a few more questions, but he didn't have the guts. Jun Jiuqing always gave him the feeling that he couldn't afford to offend him. Nanjin Shu couldn't get anything out of Jun Jiuqing, so he had no choice but to leave. Chang Wanzhou was wiping the table in the room. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing his fair and slender wrists. He was holding a rag in his hand. His expression was focused and serious, as if this was something very important. When Sun Yi entered, this was the scene he saw. However, the moment he walked in, Chang Wanzhou immediately sensed his presence. He stopped what he was doing and turned around to look at him. Chang Wanzhou's lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but he held back in the end. However, his gaze towards Sun Yi was filled with respect. Sun Yi's gaze swept across the table. It was shiny and shiny. She really didn't know how many times he had wiped it. In fact, Chang Wanzhou had been doing this ever since Chu Liwei went to the Star Passage and entered the illusory God Palace. It seemed to be out of some uneasiness. When he was nervous or flustered, he would often do this. Master has already entered the illusory God Palace, so there is no need to clean this place. Sini Dao. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips slightly. Chu Liwei didn't stay in the illusory God Palace for too long. After chatting with Su Li, she planned to go back first. After all, Wu Yao and the others were still waiting outside. Those who were allowed to enter the illusory God Palace could enter and leave freely, so even if she wanted to leave now, she wouldn't encounter any obstruction. However, as soon as she stepped out, she saw a familiar face. Xu Jing. At this moment, she was standing outside the door, her eyes filled with resentment and unwillingness. "Oh, eighth divine envoy, why are you here?" Probably because she didn't expect Chu Liwei to suddenly come out, a trace of guilt flashed across Xu Jing's face. Hearing that Chu Liwei really finished the Star Passage and successfully entered the illusory God Palace, Xu Jing's heart surged with waves that couldn't be calmed down for a long time. After struggling for a long time, she still came here. Originally, she just wanted to see what was going on, but who knew that Chu Liwei would actually come out like this, and the two sides just happened to bump into each other. Xu Jing managed to control the expression on her face with difficulty. "Nothing, I'm just a little curious as to how you came in." Chu Liuyue's lips curved. "Naturally, I walked in openly." Xu Jing unconsciously clenched her fists. "I really underestimated you before." "Thank you for the praise, eighth divine envoy." Chu Liwei smiled. "I like to surprise people the most. You really have a sharp tongue." Xu Jing took a deep breath. "It won't be too late to show off in front of this divine envoy when you ascend to the heavens and become a god." She didn't believe that Chu Liwei would really succeed when the time came. "Eighth divine envoy, you misunderstood me. When have I ever thought of showing off in front of the divine envoys? What's more, what I said was the truth. Could it be that in this illusory God Palace, people like us can't even speak the truth? Or did the eighth divine envoy feel that these words were too harsh?" Chu Liwei was really innocent. She had never taken the initiative to provoke this eighth divine envoy, but unfortunately, the other party always seemed to dislike her and always wanted to make things difficult for her. Why bother? Xu Jing was so angry that she laughed. "You can say whatever you want. This divine envoy can't argue with you. However, since you've already entered the illusory God Palace, this divine envoy will remind you, don't be too arrogant. Otherwise, you won't even know when you'll die. And your subordinates, it's best that they all follow the rules. This illusory God Palace is not a place where you can behave atrociously." After saying that, she angrily left. Chu Liwei was left with a blank expression. Why did Xu Jing suddenly become so angry? And it seemed like it wasn't just directed at her? Chu Liwei looked at her thoughtfully, then walked towards the door. Arriving at the door, Chu Liwei pushed the door open and walked out. The situation was different from when she first came. This time, she didn't attract that amazing pressure. Everything was very calm. But when Chu Luiwei walked out, she was surprised to find that the people who were waiting outside on both sides of the Star Road hadn't left yet. The moment she walked out, countless pairs of eyes immediately fell on her. Chu Luiwei was startled. Looking over, she finally understood why everyone was still gathered here. Xiao Ran was standing on the Star Road, cracking the last Xian formation. In front of him, just like Chu Luiwei, a silver halo quietly floated. At this time, a portion of the veined patterns had already been drawn inside the halo. It could be seen that Xiao Ran's speed was much slower than Chu Luiwei's, and the smoothness was also a bit worse. But the overall direction was correct. As long as there weren't any mistakes later, he would be able to completely display it sooner or later. At that time, he would be like Chu Luiwei, entering the illusory god palace from the Star Road. Xiao Ran's entire attention was on the Xian formation in front of him, to the extent that he didn't notice Chu Luiwei coming out. However, the onlookers on both sides looked over with different expressions. Of course, compared to before, their attitudes and expressions had changed quite a bit. "Master!" Little Hachi smiled and waved her hand. Chu Luiwei walked towards the few of them. Chapter 2369. Mistress, why did you come out so quickly? Little Hachi asked curiously. They had thought that they would have to wait for a long time. Chu Luiwei smiled and said, I went in to find a place to stay, saw Mr. Su and Dumpling and came out. Dumpling is also here? Is she well? Chu Luiwei did not say too much. She stepped forward and pinched Aunt 11 and Aunt 12's cheeks. It's been a long time since we last met. The two of you have grown up. You must have suffered a lot in my absence all these years. It was unknown how the two young ladies managed to survive being stranded outside. Now, they had even broken through to the Supreme God level. Aunt 11, who had always been calm, showed a rare look of nostalgia. It's not hard. Aunt 12's eyes were already red. She pulled Chu Luiwei's sleeve and said, It's nothing. We're fine. It's still Master who had it the hardest. Although they had been outside, they had heard many rumors about Chu Luiwei. It had not been easy for her to come all the way to where she was now. Big Brother has always taken care of us. He has never let us suffer. Hearing Aunt 12's words, Chu Luiwei was relieved. Sin Yi had done a good job in this regard. He had taken care of everything. He is also in the Illusion God Palace now. I will take you to see him. Shuang and the others are also there. As she spoke, Chu Luiwei glanced at Wu Yao. She had to go back and talk about the Peach Blossom dock in detail. Wu Yao nodded imperceptibly. At this moment, Zhui walked forward and cupped his fists. He said with a joyful expression, Mistress, I haven't had time to congratulate you. When Chu Luiwei finished the Star Path and entered the Illusion God Palace, he was too shocked and did not have time to say anything. He just watched as Chu Luiwei went in. Now that he saw her come out, of course he had to go forward and congratulate her. Chu Luiwei's lips curved up. Speaking of which, I still have to thank Treasure Pavilion. The mythical flame diagram had indeed helped her clear her thoughts and gave her the most appropriate reason. No matter how suspicious others were, she only needed to release the mythical flame diagram. Ming Shu hurriedly waved his hands. I wouldn't dare. You were able to succeed mainly because of your own strength. Our Zhenbao Pavilion also shares your honor and is very happy for you. Ha! These were Ming Shu's heartfelt words. Over the years, it wasn't that no one had read the mythical diagram of flame, but in the end, only Chu Luiwei had truly comprehended all the profound formations on the Star Path and entered the illusory God Palace. Wasn't this enough to explain the problem? Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows and smiled. You're too polite. I should be the one thanking the first master and second master. When the second master's body gets better, I will definitely pay him a visit personally. She probably wouldn't be able to meet the first master. But second master, however, she insisted on meeting him no matter what. His smile froze and he secretly complained in his heart. Why was Madame still thinking about this? Then I will definitely go back and talk to second master. Then, I will have to trouble Lord Mingshu. After getting the answer he wanted, Chu Luiyue left with his people in satisfaction. The group of people left in such a carefree manner, leaving behind a group of people looking at each other in dismay. Just left like that? Why was the expression on Chu Luiyue's face as calm and collected as ever from the beginning to the end? She had finished the star path and entered the illusory god palace. If it were anyone else present, they would probably be extremely excited. But she was like this, how to put it, it was as if all of this was natural for her. She had long expected this, or she had long been certain that she would be able to reach this step and obtain all of this. But she was just a person from the divine ruins world who didn't even have a bloodline totem. In the long 10,000 years, other than the 7th divine emissary Jinyunlai, she was the only one who had entered the illusory god palace through the star path. Even they were excited about this for a long time, but she was the only one who was calm beyond imagination. In comparison, their reactions seemed a bit excessive. Many people quieted down. After a long time, a low voice came from the crowd. Now that she has even entered the illusory god palace, will she really be able to ascend to the heavens and become a god in half a year? No one answered. They had already discovered that all of the rules and principles seemed to be useless in front of Chu Luiyue. All of the so-called restrictions and impossibilities had become a joke in front of her. Then, who would dare to say that she couldn't? Chu Luiyue and the others walked back. As they walked, Chu Luiyue asked about the two girls. What made her feel more at ease was that Sun Yi really took care of the two of them. Other than not bringing them with him, he treated them even better than Little 13. Little 13 even had to undergo Sun Yi's strict tests, but the two girls didn't need to. They only needed to work hard to eat their fill. Compared to other people, the two of them didn't need to cultivate, because the pills they swallowed contained a shocking amount of energy. And the two of them had special physiques, so they could completely digest all of it and convert it into their own strength. As a result, his strength naturally increased. This was something that others couldn't help but envy. Aunt 11 thought for a while and asked, Master, what is it like inside the illusory god palace? Chu Luiyue only thought that she was curious, so she paused for a moment and said, Actually, there's nothing special, just that the spiritual power is more abundant and pure. Aunt 11 pursed her lips. Master, can you bring us in to take a look? Chu Luiyue was really surprised this time. Aunt 11, you want to go in and take a look? Aunt 11 nodded and added, Sister also wants to go. Aunt 12 nodded lightly and looked at Chu Luiyue nervously. Mistress, is this inconvenient? I heard that ordinary people aren't allowed to enter the palace of the illusory god. It wouldn't be good if it made things difficult for Master. Chu Luiyue looked at the two of them thoughtfully. Probably because she had to take care of her sister, Aunt 11 had been independent since young and didn't like to trouble others. If she could do it herself, she would never ask others to help her. So she rarely took the initiative to ask for anything. As for Aunt 12, that was even more so. She had a soft personality and was very timid. Usually, if her tone was a little harsh, it would scare the little girl until her eyes turned red. Other than being obedient, she was obedient. She was extremely well behaved. And now, these two girls actually wanted to enter the illusory god palace to take a look? How rare. Chu Luiyue said, the illusory god palace is heavily guarded, so it's not easy to go in. Even I can't bring you in now. The expressions of the two girls dimmed significantly. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat and couldn't help but ask, why do you want to go in so badly? Chapter 2370. Aunt 11 paused for a moment and said straightforwardly, No reason, I just want to go. Aunt 12 nodded. But if Mistress is so difficult, we won't go, Chu Luiyue thought for a while and touched the duo's faces. I'll think of a way. The two girls rarely asked her for anything. If there was hope, she would still want to satisfy their wishes. Little Hachi stood at the side and asked curiously, Mistress, other than what you just said, is there anything else different about the palace of the illusory god? Chu Luiyue laughed. Even if there is, it's not something your mistress can know now. The palace of the illusory god was full of forbidden places. Moreover, she had just entered, so how could she know so much? Su Li had stayed there for so long, but she had not made any progress. But I did see a few oracles. Chu Liwei remembered what happened before. The others were fine, but the 8th oracles seemed to have a deep hatred for me. Shu Jing? Little Hachi coughed. I think I know. Chu Liwei looked at her in confusion. Little Hachi blinked innocently. It's just that I slapped her before. Who knew that she was still thinking about it? Chu Liwei was speechless. For a moment, even someone as eloquent as her didn't know what to say. Aunt 11 was very curious. Sister 8, didn't they say that the oracles are very powerful? You slapped her, but she didn't look for trouble with you? Little Hachi shrugged. She spoke rudely, so I had to teach her a lesson. As for looking for trouble with me, does your sister 8 look like someone who can be bullied easily? Aunt 11 shook her head seriously. Aunt 12 whispered, I remember Sister 8 said that only we can bully others, but we can't let others step on us. Little Hachi immediately went over and kissed Aunt 12 happily. Sister 12 is really smart. You still remember this? 12th Nyang blushed and felt a little embarrassed. But when she saw little Hachi's happy expression, she smiled too. I remember what Sister 8 said. Chu Liwei glanced at her faintly. Is this how a good memory is used? Of all things to remember, why do I have to remember this? No wonder Shu Jing was like that. No one would be able to tolerate this, right? However, there was something strange about this matter. Little Hachi, you gave her a slap, and she let you go just like that? Shu Jing was not that kind of person. Little Hachi shrugged. Who knows? However, I saw that she seemed to have gotten herself into some trouble before, so I don't think she has the time or energy to think about it now. What's more, if she dares to take revenge, I'll immediately let everyone in the Illusion God Palace know that I slapped her. If this matter were to spread, Shu Jing wouldn't be able to stay in the Illusion God Palace anymore. Just the criticism and ridicule of everyone would be enough to drown her. Wu Yao followed behind them and shivered silently. He also mourned for Shu Jing for 3 seconds. Of all people to provoke, why did she have to provoke little Hachi? In the 13 Yu guards, other than Big Brother, the rest would take a detour when they saw little Hachi. Who would dare to provoke her? That Shu Jing was really too much. If she really couldn't handle it, she would have picked a soft persimmon. How unlucky. Chu Liwei thought for a while and said, it's better to be careful. Shu Jing would definitely take revenge for the smallest grievance. After being humiliated like this, she would definitely not let it go. For some reason, she hadn't made a move yet, but it didn't mean that she wouldn't do it in the future. Little Hachi tucked her hair behind her back and smiled charmingly. I know. However, the premise was that Shu Jing still had the ability. If she couldn't even deal with the problem of the Herb Mountain, then how could she continue to be the 8th oracle? The group returned to their residence. Before they could enter the door, they saw Hua Shuangshuang walking over from another direction. Second brother. Wu Yao was the first to shout. Hua Shuangshuang looked up and was instantly delighted. 11th sister. 12th sister. Why are you here? Come and take a good look at me. Wu Yao was speechless. Hua Shuangshuang walked over quickly. He was very tall. Even though the 2 girls had grown up, they only reached his chest when they stood in front of him. Hua Shuangshuang bent down and patted their heads gently. It's been a long time since we last met. You've grown so tall. Aunt 11 and Aunt 12 were obviously very happy. They shouted in unison, hello, second brother. Aunt 11 looked over his shoulder. Second brother, what's this? Hua Shuangshuang tilted his shoulders slightly. Golden-winged raven-boned beast. I just picked it up a while ago. With a flap of its wings, the raven-boned beast flew onto Aunt 11's arm. Aunt 11 praised, it's so beautiful. Sensing that Hua Shuangshuang was very close to Aunt 11, the raven-boned beast let down its guard and rubbed its head against the back of Aunt 11's hand. Aunt 12 looked envious. Sister, it seems to like you a lot. Aunt 11 stretched out her hand. Aunt 12 quickly waved her hand and took a step back. I don't want it. The raven-boned beast looked a little fierce. She had always been a little afraid of it. Hua Shuangshuang laughed. 12th sister, look at this. As he spoke, he looked back and snapped his fingers. Come here. As soon as he finished speaking, a round, furry little head popped out from behind the corner. Hua Shuangshuang waved his hand. That little thing was immediately encouraged and ran over to them. Its fur was white and golden, and it had a pair of big black eyes. Its 4 hooves were pure black. It was a divine beast, Wind Strider Tiger. However, this Wind Strider Tiger was still very young. It looked like it was only a month old. Even though it tried its best to run over, its short legs were still not fast enough. Unexpectedly, it looked a little silly and adorable. Aunt 12's heart melted. She had no resistance to this kind of thing. The Wind Strider Tiger ran to Hua Shuangshuang's feet and rubbed against them intimately. Hua Shuangshuang clapped his hands, and the Wind Strider Tiger jumped onto his hands. Its body was still very small, and it was not even as long as Hua Shuangshuang's forearm. Hua Shuangshuang handed the Wind Strider Tiger over. You're not afraid of this one, right? Aunt 12 nodded repeatedly and asked a little nervously. Second brother, can I really carry it? Hua Shuangshuang laughed. Of course. Aunt 12 stretched out her hands and carefully carried the little Wind Strider Tiger into her arms. The little thing was not afraid of strangers. It sniffed Aunt 12's body. It smelled sweet and fragrant, and immediately lay down in her arms comfortably. Aunt 12 looked at it curiously and happily for a while. She could not help but ask. Second brother, did you pick this up too? It looks very small. Why didn't it follow its mother? Hua Shuangshuang nodded and frowned slightly. Yes, when I found it, its mother was already dead. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.